everyone. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live.
That was clunky.
Monday edition, a little bit earlier. Ginger Runner Live episode number 356. It's 1 p.m. on Monday afternoon, so we're doing a little bit earlier.
We haven't had a show at our actual show time in 3 weeks now, and I'm very surprised that you actually got the day and the time correct.
It just took 3 weeks. I think I kind of figured it out. The reason we're doing a little bit earlier today is, one, because our guests, we want to accommodate their schedule, but also because it kind of fits into the synergy of the last couple of weeks. So we had John Kelly on from the UK at 1 p.m. We had Damian Hall on the show last week on at 1 p.m. Pacific, by the way. I'm saying Pacific time. So today we thought it would be nice and fun, and it just kind of blends in by bringing on both of their coach and our coach, David Roche, for another episode of Ask Coach Roche. I was like, let's just do it at 1 p.m. I think it works
Why
perfect.
not? Or we could have split the difference between the Monday and Tuesday 1 p.m. and just had the show like in the middle.
There's really a lot of things that we could have done, but we're stuck with 1 p.m.
All right, okay.
We are live. So welcome everyone to Ginger Runner Live episode 356 with David Roche. It's going to be Ask Coach Roche episode 10. This is actually the 10th anniversary of Ask Coach Roche, which is sort of our ongoing series where we get to ask Coach David Roche as many questions as we want during the live show. So sit back, relax, everyone. The show begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 356. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Mondays to spend a little bit of it with us. Be about today's show. One, it's earlier, so we're wide awake. We're not like falling asleep or anything like we normally do during Ginger Runner Live.
Normally at 5 p.m. we're out. That's bedtime.
Good night.
For us.
But also really excited because today our guest is our dear friend, one of our favorite humans on earth. And every time we have him on, I think we sort of start the show with that, but it is not an exaggeration. David just has become one of these sort of hero types to us, a real life Ted Lasso, if you will. I say that, and I don't know if he likes that. I don't know if he's like, please stop calling me Ted Lasso.
Honestly, Ted Lasso is a real... Ted Lasso is the fictional version of David Roche.
Yeah, Ted Lasso clearly was written after
David was here
Roche.
first.
Yes, David's been here a lot longer. So our good friend David Roche is going to be joining us on the show today for our series, our ongoing series we've been calling Ask Coach Roche, where David will answer all of your training-related questions, racing-related questions, basically anything that you might have as far as a question is concerned. David will answer it. We always end up leaving these shows smarter, happier, more inspired than when we start them. And that, again, is also not an overstatement. Like, we absolutely love these episodes. So David Roche will be joining us here in just a second. He is also fresh off of a victory this last weekend. He won a trail race. I'm sure he doesn't want to talk about that, but we will try to dig in a little bit. He's also the coach of the last two guests that we've had on this show. So it's sort of like an ongoing 3-week sort of story arc. This is like season 3 of Lost, where the 3 episodes sort of blend together.
Ooh, I hope the finale isn't as disappointing as...
We'll call this like a mid-season break finale.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Because we'll probably bring these guests back on. But David is the coach to both John Kelly, who we had on 2 weeks ago, and Damian Hall, who we had on last week, both UK runners who have spent the last year sort of battling each other, ribbing each other, and just blasting some UK FKTs, just blowing them out of the water. So it's going to be a fun episode to sort of dive in with the coach of these athletes and talk about how they trained and all that good stuff. Of course, before we introduce our guest, we are live.
There's not going to be surprise guests coming in.
Never know. Never know with the Ginger Runner Live. It's not just myself. It's not just our guest. There's Kim. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well. What's up, everyone? Kim Newberry here, as always. Another bonus of doing a 1 p.m. show is we are getting people from all over the world joining us today, which is really fun. So welcome back to folks who have been able to join us for the last couple weeks because it works with your time zone.
Yeah.
If you're new to an Ask Coach Roche show, if you have any coaching question, please pop them in the chat room. We're already getting lots of questions rolling in. So
awesome.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. And we also have questions over on Discord that we'll be polling throughout the show as well. So if you are a Patreon crew member, drop into Discord and you can ask your questions there. They get priority. Just speaking of which, we do have to start every show by thanking just an incredible core community of people. We call them the GR crew. They are our Patreon supporters over on patreon.com/thegingerrunner. It is because of them that we're able to do these live shows, reviews, films, basically do everything. It is because of our GR crew. If you'd like to join the crew, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. And two individuals in particular, Rick Bjarnason out of British Columbia. He's an ultra runner. He's at that top tier, and his company, cheekymonkeymedia.ca. They redid the gingerrunner.com website. He's a brilliant human. Really, really thankful for him. Brian Sands, another longtime supporter, top tier supporter. Brian Sands has an inspiring journey with running himself. Ran his first marathon, ultra marathon, all within the last few years. Last year, he ran his first 100-miler. And this last weekend, he ran his first 24-hour event in Alaska. And we actually got to chat with him both the day before and live during the 24-hour event on our Daily Brew daily live stream, which is for Patreon members as well. So, I mean, a lot of fun stuff happening on the Patreon side of things. So consider joining if you have not already. Shout out to Brian and Rick. Thanks, guys. All right. Without further ado, coming to us all the way from sunny, beautiful Colorado.
It looks like it actually might be June there because it's winter here.
Yeah, it looks gorgeous. David Roche.
Yay!
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. To give you insight into the life of a coach, Ethan and Kim just saw me glance down at my phone. I was texting an athlete just randomly out of the blue. I had a thought. I was like, random question. Do you have dry feet? And that was all. So if I receive a response during this podcast, I will let everyone know whether this athlete does have dry feet.
I just need to check my phone to make sure you weren't asking me. No,
yeah,
it wasn't me.
Hold on. I'll get back to you, David.
My feet are wet.
They are soaking in a tub of Jell-O. I hope that is okay. I'm just telling you now.
They actually came from like a semi-subsistent place. So this athlete suffers from like pretty extreme hot spots, especially when running a little bit faster, but basically across shoes. So it's not a shoe problem. It's something we've been facing a lot more this summer. And it's something that I've seen a number of athletes face, and trying to get to the bottom of it because we've tried a bunch of different interventions, and I have some theories. So not only do my theories encompass training, sometimes they encompass foot care and dermatology. So full service over here.
Now I want to solve this mystery. So they're getting hot spots with this, not a particular pair of shoes, just the feet in general, not the shoes' fault. Hot spots is in pain that turn into blisters, or hot spots is in literal temperature hot spots?
Bilateral, essentially friction rubbing is my guess, just based on the way that it presents. And it's something that a lot of people suffer from. I know I've had it periodically in the past. And I'm kind of curious, like, what some of the root causes could be, because this is one of those random issues that strikes a number of people that no one really talks about. They just think, oh, it might be kind of normal that my feet sometimes feel like they're burning off sometimes. And it's transitory. Like, it usually doesn't amount to blisters or cuts or anything, but it can be really uncomfortable and make running less fun. So always trying to turn little levers and see what happens.
Let us know what they say. Clearly, I don't think we'll have an answer tonight, but this could also be a mystery. We do from time to time on our...
It's this afternoon. It's not tonight.
It's not somewhere. So we do this occasionally on our daily live stream, Daily Brew, where we present a mystery and we try to solve the mystery over the course of a couple of episodes.
I did, to test this theory, I did get some moisturizing cream yesterday to see. I always test things on myself first. So I'm like, I do have dry feet. Maybe if I notice a difference, this will be... Yeah, this is getting too far into the weeds on feet. I imagine there's some people listening to this that really want to talk about feet, but for everyone else, probably not too much feet talk necessary. So
yeah, we're bringing
feet people out there.
Yeah, we're bringing in a whole new demographic on the first 20 minutes.
In the YouTube title, just a lot of feet talk.
A lot of feet talk.
Yeah.
I would almost guarantee that just adding that as even as a keyword on this search algorithm, the viewership through the roof. So there's so much that we can talk about today, David. I wanted to start very, very quickly with what you just posted on Twitter this morning, because I think it also gives some of our viewers who maybe aren't familiar with David Roche a bit of insight into who you are as a human and just maybe how you work. So as you'll see here on the screen, this is David's Twitter from this morning. David says, FedEx truck absolutely blasted our fence and just drove away. I respect the swag too much to be angry. Let's all aim to channel that energy this week. So as you can see in the photo there, we can make it a little larger. David's fence destroyed. It looks like you got a response from FedEx Help. It says, hello there. My name is Joanna. My sincere apologies to hear about this situation. Please DM me your name, delivery address, phone number, and email address. I would be glad to help you with this. David, in the most David response possible. Thank you, Joanna. The driver was probably just in a rush and we don't want to get them into trouble. This fence is on us, or the first fence is on us. You are awesome. David, first, have that level of like patience and zen.
We've got to stop this flattery. To give that driver credit, they were driving like it was the next movie in Fast and the Furious. There was clearly, it was probably Vin Diesel, maybe Ludacris driving that car. And who am I to stop? Like there might be some international conspiracy ring that they are currently in the mode of stopping. They had to drop off, our package first, obviously, because of course. But who am I to get in the way of that? But more to the point, it was like, I actually did respect it. Like that's not a joke, because we've all had those situations where it's like, oh no, this is gonna ruin everything, and we want to be like, well, I don't really have to deal with that. This driver was just living their best life. So swag, big props for that swag.
I cannot help but want to make a parallel here, because I think the fence is clearly a metaphor or something going wrong in any event or race or life. Something happens that is out of your control that is probably caused by some giant truck blazing through your life. It's how you respond to that sort of dictates who you are or how you can be. And in your case, David, again, this is as an outsider just observing this morning, seeing this, it'd be so easy to go, they destroyed my fence, this ruined my day, this ruined my week.
Do they know the price of lumber right now?
Yeah, lumber's through the roof. You can even get a sheet of OBS or OSB without spending $99. There's a parallel here. So perhaps it's a lesson. Did you do this on purpose? Is this a lesson for your athletes that's like subliminal? Is this a new thing?
Yeah. We can't control Vin Diesel. We can only control how we respond to Vin Diesel. No, I mean, yeah. And actually, I think that there is we got a question into our podcast that was about like positivity in general and like the decision-making process that goes into that. And I think one of the important caveats there is like, there are situations that truly do suck. Any health issue, like relationship issues, mental health issues, like the reality of being human is that being a human is hard. But there are some things that don't suck. Getting our fence freaking blasted by the FedEx truck doesn't really suck in the big scheme of things. It's just a minor inconvenience. Actually, it's kind of funny. Probably not going to even fix it for like a few years, knowing us. And trying the best within the constraints of life to know the difference between the two. And so as an athlete, we're presented with that same conundrum all the freaking time. Like a bad run where you go out and you feel like crap and you're judging yourself actually doesn't suck. On some level that it's fine. You're going to be fine. Everything's great. But it's a choice we're making every day. Like, do we go down the spiral? Do we judge ourselves? Are we able to indulge our self-belief through those down periods? And maybe that can be contrasted with like, sometimes your leg snaps in half and that's a little bit different. Sure. But like knowing those differences, I think is what allows us to explore our true potential, because if every single time the metaphorical fence gets blasted, you end up like freaking out and blaming someone and getting so angry about it. It's like life just ends up being a grind, and training ends up being a grind, and being an athlete impossible if you internalize too much of that stuff.
I can't help but just when these sort of speed bumps pop up now, I'm going to think of this fence. And I know that this is like a joke, and obviously it really happened. I'm not saying you didn't make a joke, like it is actually what happened.
Though, that would be hilarious. If I just
big con.
I just like accidentally like crushed the fence, and then and Megan was gone, and I was just like, hey, it was a FedEx truck. Here's this elaborate social media ploy to get Megan to go on. She would actually, thing is, she would see right through it because I've backed into so much shit over time that she'd be like, David, I know this. This has all the telltale signs of you.
There's paint grapes that matched the color of your car, not FedEx.
Yeah.
David,
Well, no,
we need
I
to
back
talk.
up so slowly now, knowing that I could never do that much damage. I would just cause a little nick. This person was like pedal to the metal, have to go, stop that the international drug ring from kidnapping our children or something.
Man, Vin Diesel. I would say like, wow, he's a FedEx driver now. Like, what a career 180, what a pivot. But you're right. Like maybe he's able to do both. Maybe solve crimes and save the world. And man, that
we all need to have hobbies.
We just call him the Dees.
Is that what we call him?
That is not. I don't know why I said that. I was trying to.
Hilarious.
We're so casual with Vin Diesel. We call him the Dees. He's gonna call me and go, "Don't you ever say that again."
I think he's calling you right now. He's asking about your feet.
No, that's they're soaking in Jello. All right, let's dive in. You are the coach of so many athletes, so many top tier athletes of all abilities from around the world. It is such a cool thing to sort of get a chance to talk to you because you have so much experience with so many different types of athletes. So you don't just cater to the elite or the fastest, you cater to everybody. Kim and myself obviously are very fortunate to have you as a coach, and we love asking just the most random weird questions, and you're able to provide us with great insight. The last 2 weeks we've had top tier athletes on the show. We had John Kelly, we had Damian Hall, both of which are coached by you, and both of which tackled over this last year very similar objectives. But I can only imagine that their training was vastly different, or was it the same? So let's sort of dig in there and find out, how do you as a coach approach training two athletes of that caliber for projects that big? Like the Pennine Way is massive, C2C, massive. How do you go about that?
Yeah, talking about Pennine Way and massive that close together, it's like a lot of temptation for a Freudian slip on those words. The people that get that,
that took me 5 to 10 seconds to get, and then when it started to like click, how have I not made that joke yet? I'm disappointed in myself.
I actually I wrote an article on John's thing and did a slight allusion to your film on Barkley, but neither here nor there. I'll send it to you. It's like an Easter egg for you. But the big idea here when it comes to the Pennine Way in particular. So I didn't even really understand the UK community quite that much until I started coaching John and Damian. And the Pennine Way is basically their Appalachian Trail, the iconic trail, but it's much shorter. It's 268 miles versus the thousands that the Appalachian Trail is. It's wetter. It's a little bit less steep, but it's this challenge that all of the best athletes have gone up against over time in the UK, which is this thriving ultra and fell running scene. And I didn't fully understand the history there, that this is a record that had stood for 30 years. It was considered largely untouchable. And then they both decided last year that they wanted to go for it separately. And I didn't really even consider at the time like what the dynamics are of coaching people that are both going for this same big goal. But it was one of the more interesting things ever. So July 2020, John goes and resets the record by like an hour or so over Mike Hartley, who's a legend. And then 8 days later, Damian resets it. And there's a lot of mixed feelings going on there. That's, incredible people, incredible competitors. Any incredible competitor, part of you is like, no, this is mine. And, I think John was motivated by that, for a number of reasons. Damian was also motivated by that. And so over the last year of, or the years I've been coaching them, have gotten to see two athletes in the middle of, as a historian named Martin Stone in UK Fell Running said, it's a heavyweight boxing match where it's like Ali and Frazier going back and forth. And seeing that bring out the best in them has been such a joy. So they have some similarities in training and also, some prominent differences based on their backgrounds. And exploring that with them has been so fun and such an interesting thing as someone that's a fan of them and now a fan of the UK fell running scene as well.
I like you mentioned, we talked about it with both of them, just the size. I can't even say it. Yeah, the size of the Pennine Way. It is massive. Hundreds of miles.
Yes.
Damn you, David. Never, ever crossed my mind. Have had 2 brilliant weeks of talking about these crazy routes. I can never say it again now.
We get it. The trail is girthy. We can drop it. But no, to talk a little bit about their training, I think sometimes it's easy for people to assume that 268 miles or 180 in the coast to coast that Damien just did, or any of these, even 100 milers or 50 milers, if you're someone that is doing less distance, are these unthinkable things that you have to do unthinkable training to be ready for. When in reality, that is not the case about physiology at all. Our psychology tries to map on certainty to this uncertain event, and sometimes leads people to overtrain or think that they're not capable of something they truly are. And both Damien and John's training really embodies that. And so the big principles to think about when you're talking about any ultra or anything where you're stepping into the unknown, which could even be a road marathon, is what you're actually trying to train. You're not trying to train, I want to be ready for this specific moment, because you never will be. You're trying to train your body so that when you hit the unknown, all of the tools, everything you've brought with you in your saddlebag of courage is going to, lead you to where you want to go. So it's just like everything else. You improve running economy, so you get as fast as you can be, so that when your pace starts to erode, if you're at 70% of your aerobic threshold, the higher you raise the ceiling, the higher that 70% is. Meanwhile, you can't compress that percentage too much over time, because you can only be so fatigue resistant, especially at these longer events. Second is being prepared for the specific stresses of downhills. So downhills are the ultimate killer when it comes to ultras. People don't really think about the eccentric contractions that are involved. Even if your race is flat, as you start to slow down, the duty factor increases, which is a funny word, but you stay on the ground a little bit longer. As you do that, there's more eccentric contractions in your stride. That's kind of how sometimes you can have no quads, even if you've been going easy the whole time.
Right.
And then the third is to really focus on overall health. This all gets back to central fatigue resilience. So there's this concept called central fatigue, which is how the brain modulates neural drive into the muscles. So even when a muscle is not tired, it can fatigue based on how the nervous system is responding. They've seen that in ultras, in long bike races, things like that, this is the one factor that really differentiates people. So there's not that many ways you can train it, but the most important thing is to not overtrain. Because if your nervous system is just pushed just a little bit too far, your body won't be ready when you step into the unknown. And so both John and Damien did not do what you would classically assume is humongous mileage. John was in the 70-ish miles per week or a little less. Damien was sometimes a little bit more, but not hugely. They never went beyond 30 miles in training. They did some vert, but not wild vert. They were living complex, busy lives, and the training was just designed, okay, let's make this athlete the fastest they can be, resilient, and super freaking healthy. If we can do those 3 things, then their baseline toughness and ability will do the rest. And if there's anything I know about John and Damien, it's that their toughness and ability is off the freaking charts.
Right. I think that's fascinating. We heard from both of them, they both mentioned how volume wasn't max volume wasn't the focus of training. It was smart volume.
Yeah. And I think Damien even mentioned that since working with David, he's cut back a little bit as well.
The least he's ever done, the least weekly volume that he's ever done, but he's never been as in shape. It's been the best sort of move for him to move that direction. And I think you brought up some really interesting stuff there, just in regards to training to be the fastest you can be as the benefit for the long distance training. Because I think, for years, having been an ultra for years, the big mindset was, if you're training for 100, if you're training for something max beyond that, volume. You want to do max volume. You want to get those big long runs. You want to do back-to-back 30s or back-to-back, do a 35 miler and a 25 miler back-to-back. It doesn't sound like you're really working in that realm. It's more about speed and smart, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I just had to change my microphone. Does this sound okay?
There's a little bit of static on the back end. What happened?
Oh, my cat. Long story, but I don't have enough plugs to plug in the camera and the mic and the outlet at once.
The charge cable.
I'm going to try one more setting. I'm really sorry.
We can hear you. No, it sounds great. Yeah. It's fine.
I'm going to try that. Does that sound at all okay?
Nothing changed.
Nothing changed.
But we can still hear you.
A great metaphor for life right there. Yeah. So with both of them, the idea with ultras in general is that there is nothing magical happening at mile 35 or 40 of a long run that can't be happening earlier. And if you can harness those aerobic adaptations through consistency, through solid vert in your long runs, but not overdoing the distance, fueling well enough that you're not finishing them wrecked, then your body's going to be the best prepared to handle these abnormal stresses that you might experience on race day or FKT day or whatever your big adventure is. That the goal is not to try to simulate mind-blowing, over-the-top stress that you might get on race day. The goal is to have this background pulse that prepares you to do what might seem impossible. And so, that's kind of how we approach it for all of our athletes that we coach. Like, when thinking about Western States and, the people that are approaching that and hoping to win this year, I think our athletes, they've really put themselves out there in training, but you'll notice there's really not that much of a huge overarching stress focus. And kind of the background idea here is that if I can get an athlete to a start line where they are confident that if at the start they are like, hey guys, we're canceling this 268 mile run or this 100-mile run, and instead we're running a 10K, that they'd also be like, heck yeah, I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
If we can do that, then they're going to have the best chance when they hit the unknown.
Man, you just even mentioned Western States, and I'm realizing it's just around the corner. We could even dive into that, but I do want to start answering questions because Kim, you've been so patient,
many questions,
so patient, and I could dive into the last 2 weeks and all that for too long. Kim,
and you all can keep asking questions. That's fine. We have a big list here. So you were mentioning getting athletes to the start line. There's a question from GDK Mouse in the chat room, and they asked, how do you deal with the anxiety of going to races again? So just getting to that start line again after the last year that we've obviously all had. And they go on to say, is there a way to get over the fear?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think the biggest way to get over fear or anxiety is just embracing it and being like, heck yeah, I want that. That the whole point of racing is to have these feelings that might be a little bit uncomfortable or be a little bit different or raise your anxiety levels a little. Like, that is what's so cool about being an athlete, is that you get to put yourself out there in these relatively, in the big scheme of life, low stake setting. This is a fence. This isn't like your life crumbling around you if the race goes poorly. And in the process, yeah, embrace the fact that, yeah, you might not be able to sleep perfectly before the event, that you get there and there's a pit in your stomach. Like, all of that stuff is the cool part. That's the part that, that's why I want athletes racing. If someone doesn't feel any of that, I'm like, why even do this? Let's just go do another training run and prepare for the next thing. Like, I want you to be a little bit nervous, to have some nerves. And if it starts going over the top, then we might need to think like, okay, are we projecting other psychological things onto this race that it's not? So, embrace it, but also keep the race in context, that this isn't a verdict on you as a human or even a verdict on you as an athlete. This is an opportunity to celebrate everything that life entails. It's not a test.
I mean, that's a great question, a great place to start with viewer questions, because I think a lot more people are getting back to in-person racing now. We've seen it trickle over the last 6 to 8 months, I'd say. There's just been fewer races until now. We're starting to see an uptick. So that's a question I think we're all going to be sort of addressing, is how do I do these again? How do I function at the beginnings of these again? So it's a great question. I'll let you keep going.
Yeah. You've also mentioned the word consistency a few times already today. And Nicole in the chat room asked, consistency is essential for mastery, but what consistency means in practice gets dicey, like needing to run every day dicey. What is your definition of consistency in training?
And you've given me this in my notes on my training log, is you're focused on consistency. And I love this question because I think it relates to everybody.
Yeah. So, there's a difference between consistency and compulsion. So, when we're starting to get into compulsions or things like that, yes, there might be some unhealthy behaviors involved. Consistency is more the desire to show up, to invest in yourself every day. And that investing in yourself doesn't mean running some days. Some days it means resting and also doing some little things like foam rolling or whatever it is that you do on the side. But this daily investment in yourself, and understanding that investing in yourself doesn't mean grinding yourself into a fine pulp. Or if you're John and Damien, running 150 miles a week, though they could easily do that. That's the opposite of investing in people's selves. That's like giving into an insecurity, letting the insecurity drive the wheel. Instead of insecurity, we want swag to drive the wheel. We want to be that FedEx driver a little bit. And like present, once we're able to do that, invest in ourselves with a little bit of self-insurance, that's what I mean by consistency. And so specifically with running, like, 5 or 6 times a week, resting, doing some little things on the side, that's all it means. You're not investing yourself all the time. You're not running all the time. You're just showing the freak up, and you're showing up to rest as well.
I think that's great. Keep going. Good questions today, everybody.
Yeah, great questions. Question from Vivian over on our Discord server. Vivian asks, David, tips and tricks for sticking to a training plan. So basically how to keep it fun and not get overwhelmed or too wrapped up in numbers.
Yeah, I mean, what I tell every athlete that I coach is that it's all about the general spirit, nothing about the specific the specific numbers, right? The numbers that are on a plan don't mean shit. Like the body does not care about that. At the cellular level, all of that is just washed away in the complexity of how our bodies work. Our brains, meanwhile, like to go on to the exact number down to the decimal point, or even like within that ballpark. And that's just not how adaptation works. So let's say a run says 8 miles easy on trails. That might, sounds like, oh, that means I go run on the trails for 8 miles. But it could mean that you go do a 4-mile summit, or it could mean that you feel good and you do a 10 or 12 mile run that progresses a little bit. It's feeding back this number that means a certain thing under the surface of like what you're looking for from the training perspective, with a constant feedback with how you feel, and letting those have a dance together and actually mix in and inform one another. So even though I'm writing numbers every day, I really want athletes to be fully self-actualized in how they're thinking about the training, not knowing that like I'm not going to get on them unless they're inserting like training purposes that aren't there. So for someone like John, that might mean, John's very data driven. He does almost everything to the letter,
Yeah.
For someone like Damien, it might be a little bit more free flowing, where he's doing most of it, but changing things up sometimes going a little bit longer. And the next day he'll write in his log, sorry, mate, hope all is brill, or whatever they say in their language. And that both are equally correct as long as the athlete is listening to their bodies.
One thing that I suffered from early on with other coaches was just the nervousness you get when filling out a log when you don't do prescribed mileages or workouts. So one thing that I always ran into, again, I ran without a coach for years and years. And when I got a coach, it was sort of like, I'm so excited. I need structure and support. And I found that I was really nervous if I had 6 miles prescribed and I only ran 5, or if I had 10 miles prescribed and I only ran 5. It was sort of like hard to confess that I didn't reach the number. But again, coach, this is or David, I'll just call you coach. Great television show, 90s. Check it out. One thing that I really value from you as a mentor and a coach is that you give me numbers, you give me workouts, but if I don't hit it, it's not like, oh man, you make sure you get that extra half mile next time. You're not really.
Did you not write that in your log?
But does he do it for you?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like if you give me 6 miles and I go tag a summit that's 4.5 miles long, I don't feel the guilt of writing in there 4.5 miles, tag the summit. And there's no fear of you going, we should make that extra 1.5 miles up tomorrow.
I mainly try to attack character. Just go straight. But no, I actually think those two questions, Kim, like you teed up the ideas perfectly here. That the consistency and the plan question really fit in a wonderful way. And that, like, a good example is I have gotten on you, Ethan, in the past when I feel like you aren't investing in yourself in the way that you should, right? But if you're doing a 4.5 mile summit, or even giving yourself a try and turning around after 10 minutes, it's like, Of course, that is consistency. That is investing in yourself. Or if you take a rest day, that's like that because you're stressed or your hamstring hurts or something. That's awesome. That is consistent. That is in line with the plan. The problem becomes when like athletes often through insecurity or a defense mechanism, like don't invest in themselves adequately with their decisions with these sorts of things. So, yeah, I mean, I think.
Do you see that a lot?
What's up?
Do you see that a lot?
Oh my gosh, yes, like constantly. I mean, you look at training across the board. Like if you're a student of training, I think that the hard part about something like Strava is I think it should come with almost like a psychology status report.
Sure.
Often that like the things that look impressive are often driven from places that might be a little bit negative. Perhaps insecurity. Like a good example is someone training for an ultra or something might be doing these huge miles, and it's like that might come from a place of insecurity. And yes, it might tamp down the insecurity, but the reason is because when you're doing that type of mileage, you can't be insecure because you can't be much of anything. It's just tamping down everything that you have, like all of your life force. And so that's kind of what I really want athletes to think about is like, how is this actually uplifting me? How is this investment in myself, not just feeding back into my athletics, but into the type of person I want to be? And once those overlap, that's when you get these like long-term cycles where training isn't just fun in like an abstract concept of like, oh, this is something that I wake up to do each day. Training can be this like thing that makes you a better human, a better podcaster, a better parent. And that's what's so magical about it. And then you feed that back in with like the race day nerves and the learning that you can fail, learning you can put yourself out there. And it's like, oh my gosh, that number on a plan can be so much more. It can be like, who am I as a person? And oh my gosh, I love myself. And that's the magic of athletics.
Damn it. David does it again. Damn it. That was great, David. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's get to more questions. There's some great ones today.
Yeah, this question is from Sally Gilson. I just want to mention this is Sally's third week in a row being able to join us because of the time zone.
So happy to have you, Sally.
So Sally says, I did a 24-hour track run 5 weeks ago and struggling to restart for a new training block. I did 93 miles. How long should you give yourself to recover? Legs are fine, but struggling with breathing.
Struggling breathing is really interesting. I think you need to just pay attention to your body in these types of instances. I think the rule of 1 day of rest per 10 miles raced is a good place to start as like a general baseline. But then if you're having trouble breathing, that's a time to like see a doctor or make sure that your health is where it should be. Often, how the body recovers from these varies a lot person to person, but we're capable of a lot more than we think we are. So make sure health is good. And then once health is good, you can almost always start easy because an easy run is not that much different from walking. It's not that much different from being active. Just make sure that there's this iterative process where you're not determining what you're going to do based on an abstract notion of training theory. You're determining what you're going to do based on how you feel and how you're responding and how your brain is doing, and certainly how your lungs or your legs are doing or something like that. But sometimes the only way out, past it is through it. And that's why usually if one of our athletes does a 100-miler, like John and Damien were both running 5 to 7 days later. Even though that seems excessive for both of them, they're very quick adapters. We're not pushing them at the start, but we want to start that process where these big events can become adaptation stimuli and not just breakdown stimuli. So we're trying to get it in the context of speed so that they can build upon this for their next adventures. So every race is an opportunity, but make sure that opportunity is viewed in the context of how am I actually feeling, not how do I want myself to feel.
That's a good point. And it was funny. I just saw John Kelly posted today, like some summit photos and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, John's already back to summiting local mountains and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh wait, it's John Kelly who at this point in his career is probably able to adapt from these big efforts very quickly because they're all stimuli. They're all adapting stimuli, right? The Pennine Way, everything is just, we talked about that when we talked to him, is seeing him at Barkley 1 year and then the next year at Barkley and then the next year and how he just adapted these experiences. His body got used to digging deeper and deeper. And so he'd be in better shape at the same point the next year. be in better headspace at the same point the following year. And then next thing you know, he's FKTing the Pennine Way,
Yeah,
which is wide and really girthy.
Yeah. So much so. I think that's one big reason not to really focus on this nervous system health and not overtraining. So much of what we consider like overtraining syndrome, like it's not from the races. It's not from the event. The event is a lot of stress, but fundamentally it's just one thing. Like the body, like one traumatic event, body is wonderful at healing from. The problem is chronic stress. Like acute stress is not a big deal, but when you start building chronic stress upon chronic stress upon chronic stress, you can run into major lifelong issues or major issues that really affect someone's health in the short term, especially. And that's why, we're not crushing it in training like at the same way of other people. But yeah, John and Damien also don't need to be like, oh God, I can't even think about running for a month now. They're excited to get back out there. And that's what lets you build and you build and you build, and you just keep doing it year after year and after year and cycle after cycle after cycle. And then you can have like exponential seeming growth over these long-term blocks, rather than, putting all your chips or all your eggs in a basket or something like that. And then being like, oh, well, now I need to shut down to avoid these long-term impacts. And in the process, detraining and having to start all over again. And that stop and start approach can work if someone is a freakish talent. Like there are certainly marathoners, there are certain people that are going to be at Western States that are at that level. But for most people, it's much better to set up this framework for consistency, and 100 milers or whatever your big thing is can fit into the framework of consistency as long as you're not crushing yourself along the way.
Yeah. Just speaking of consistency and building, you crushed your half marathon this weekend. You won your half marathon this last weekend, trail half marathon. Is that a adaptation for you for something else, or was that a goal? How do you train for things like that?
Well, so it gets back to like kind of what I think about training philosophy in general. So I hate talking about that sort of thing. So I'm going to broaden it out to a way that applies to everyone. Is the goal is not to train for races, even at John and Damien's level. The goal is to get your fitness really good, your running economy really good, and then be ready for big things on short notice. Because once you do that, like specificity training, like people that do hard rock and just hike up and down mountains for 3 months, it's like, you don't realize that, that's going to make you really slow, right? And so that's fine if it's just one cycle. But if we're talking 4 cycles down the line, it's like you're going to be a little bit slower than you could be. And the athlete that's really specifically trained and great at hiking, fine. Give me the athlete that's really freaking fast and practices a little bit, and I'll take them any day of the week, or at least I'll put the bet on them. And that all of our training lives are a little bit like that. Specific training where you're focused on the specific stresses of a day, overrated in long-term growth. So if an event is like hard rock, yes, you might need to do a little bit more specific training. But if you start that specific training from a period of being really confident in your running overall and your speed and your hiking and all those different things, your performance potential is going to be off the charts over time. So for me specifically, like, I love training and I want to be fast all the time and be ready to pivot to other things. So we're kind of waiting to make our decisions for this year in particular. But Megan coaches me and embodies that same thing. I think she told me before doing the half, it's like the goal here is to put yourself out there, go for it, get a big stimulus that we can then recover from and come back faster for the next thing. And that's kind of how we view every race. Even John and Damien, the first thing I said after is like, all right, celebrate, blah, 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 all that good stuff about how proud of you I am. And then it's like, okay, this is how this is going to fit in to the next thing. Yeah. Because once you do that, you get these amazing adaptation curves that can just blow where you think you might be away.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm excited to see where this stimuli takes you, because I know you guys have been doing a lot of bike training too. You guys are just crushing it on the mountains on the bike and stuff. So I don't know. I'm just excited to see what happens next. Let's get to maybe one more live question for David. Then we'll move into our after show and we'll just rapid fire through as many as we can in a couple minutes.
Yeah, this question is from Noel on Discord, and they asked something I've always struggled with. David, do you have any advice for marathon pacing strategies? Is it better to try for a flat, constant pace, or perhaps try for negative splits? If not a flat pace, what should I be training for when my plan says marathon pace?
Amazing question. Marathon training is the most fascinating part of running coaching, I think, because it is a little bit more of a math equation, because you're trying to run up against your glycogen burn rate on one end versus your body's ability to withstand the impact on the other. So the general idea is like around aerobic threshold, you're running from this place where your body primarily burns fat on the low end to glycogen, carbohydrates on the high end. As that gas tank starts to go down, your performance potential will also go down with it, even before it goes to zero. So even before you bonk, it'll start to go down. And that's all mediated by the intensity you go out at. That's why marathon pacing is so much more important than ultra pacing, where you're way below aerobic threshold the whole time. So as it relates to that, you should always be trying for a negative split. It doesn't mean you're actually going to negative split, but that mindset is definitely the right one to avoid, we've seen every athlete we know, fade at mile 18 to 20. That's because it's a common place where people go just a bit too hard, burn just a bit too much glycogen, and then start to hit that wall. And all we mean by the wall is not, oh, they're not fast enough. We mean, oh, they're burning just a little bit too much glycogen for the length of the race for them. So you're trying to negative split. With that in mind, you're thinking about, I need this to be sustainable. I need this to be relaxed. And then as you're training marathon pace, think about it as the fastest pace you could possibly sustain. Because your marathon training efforts are going to be shorter, it's better to be a little bit more prepared for a slightly faster pace and shoot your shot in training. And then when you get to race day, be super realistic about what you're capable of. What I really like athletes doing is a 5K or 10K, a couple weeks out, just solo if they can, or if they have to, or finding a race. If they're at altitude and the race is at sea level, doing it on a slight downhill, and using that, cross-correlating it with the pace charts that are out there that correlate race results with marathon pacing. And that'll give you a really good feel of what you're capable of. If you're low mileage, back off what it correlates to just a little bit, because the mileage is going to start getting to the impact of the event. If you're high mileage, you can go right for it. And once you do that, like, the marathon's the best, because you're starting in this place of like truly knowing you're going to step in the unknown, because whatever you're starting at, it's going to be pretty relaxed. And then you're just waiting. It's like, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And you're going to find, like, if it doesn't happen, it's the most uplifting event possible. And if it does happen, you learn a lot. You come back stronger the next time.
It's been a while since we've done like real good specific marathon training type of advice. And I have to say that was riddled with good advice and input for anyone looking to do a marathon at any time. It's been so long since I've run a road marathon, like a race, like a sanctioned, 10,000, 30,000 person event. It's always in the back of my mind, like, I really want to do one of those again. And just hearing what David said is like, I've never approached it so simply, or I never really looked at it that way. We talk about glycogen burn when we talk about marathons, but just to sort of hear David talk about it is like, oh, there's the light bulb. I missed it.
And the same thing applies. And the same thing applies to everyone out there. Like, whether you're doing a marathon or an ultra or a 5K, like, it all is resting on this baseline efficiency of movement, this athleticism that we all have within us. We all have this boss ass athlete within us. And we need to be able to embrace that to actually find what our potential is. So whether you're doing a 5K, a marathon, or a 100-miler, it means understanding that, okay, I'm not just going out and being like, oh, I'm just going to get through these miles because I don't consider myself a serious athlete. It's like, no, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to do some speed work, even if it's not that hard. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to risk injury. I'm going to step up to the edge and peer over. And yeah, if I sometimes fall off, that's okay, because that's a sign I'm actually investing in myself. And as we talked about, investing in yourself is the whole point of consistency. So that's why, like, consistency isn't about, oh, well, how can I just do this every day? Like, I guess that would be just run easy all the time because I won't get injured. I'll be safer. I'll do all this other stuff. It's like, no. That doesn't count. That's not betting on yourself. That's not actually investing in what you're capable of. What is like going for it. Even if you think you're not like some, elite athlete, you actually are if you just are willing to step up to the edge. And so in practice, that means like, take your rest days, do your easy runs, but also do your speed work. Also step up to races that scare the shit out of you. And like, once you do all those things, it's like anything becomes possible, and not just in running.
Absolutely brilliant. And that's a perfect place to sort of wrap up at the end of Ginger Runner Live 356 with David Roche, Coach Roche. David, today's episode, go ahead.
Wait, important update. So do you have dry feet? ? In the winter, yes. They don't seem that dry right now, though. Maybe a little. So it looks like we might be pursuing another avenue to figure out this feet situation.
Feet mystery continues. Let me text Diesel Vin. Diesel Vin.
Oh, Diesel, comma Vin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what you? That's your nickname for him?
I thought it was Diesel Van. I'll find. Brilliant. Our guest tonight, David Roche, with another incredible Ask Coach Roche episode. They never cease to inspire me, make me really, really happy. David,
that one flew by.
It totally flew by. I was looking at the clock just seconds ago and I went, oh my God, we got to wrap this up because David has a big day. David, every day that we get to talk to David is a privilege, and I hate taking him away from his busy days. But David, can you please let our audience know, let our viewers know where they can find you, Some Work, All Play, Swap, your book, all that. Where can people find out more information?
Main thing right now is Some Work, All Play podcast that Megan and I do together each week. We have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, it's just a dose of love and enthusiasm. And most of all, thank you all for being fucking awesome. We're coming out of the pandemic. How cool is this? I've done so many of these during the pandemic. So much love and hope and light ahead. As always, if you are not feeling that, that's okay. Just know that like you are freaking awesome. And this is it's such an exciting time to be like, yeah, even if I've had a tough year, now is the time to be like, it's okay to go for it. It's okay to put myself out there. It's okay to be vulnerable. And that's not just running, that's in your relationships, it's in your work. If you take nothing away, try to make this next week, this next day, getting vulnerable, making yourself just a little bit uncomfortable with how much you're putting yourself out there. Because I think that's where a lot of really freaking cool things are going to happen for you. So love you all. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Love David Roche. Love having him on the show. We are going to keep David around for just a couple more minutes so we can move into the after show and just rapid fire through some of the questions that we didn't get through in today's episode, plus our GR crew members who might have some residual questions. But of course, before we move into the after show, we have to recognize a member of the community. We call him our GR crew member of the week. Basically, we like to highlight a member who goes above and beyond, who does something amazing in the last 7 days. And Kim, who is this week's GR crew member?
This week's GR crew member of the week are actually two members. Ooh. I know we already talked about this a little bit, but crew members Chris Butcher and Brian Sands. I just want to give them both a shout out. Brian traveled up to Alaska to run a really cool 24-hour race. Nailed his 100K goal, but also special shout out to Chris, who had hip replacement surgery, who is having this incredible comeback, was able to like go crew for 24 hours, pace some loops. It was just really fun to see the camaraderie of GR crew members happening together in person. It was very, very cool.
Really cool moment this last weekend. And again, just a reminder, we did get to check in with both of them live at the race. That is available on Daily Brew, which is our daily live stream that is available to all of our GR crew members. If you would like to join the GR crew, it's very easy to do. All you got to do is go over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. And for as little as $2 a month, you support everything that we do here. Plus, you get to get all this really cool access behind the scenes type stuff. And Daily Brew is our daily live stream. It's been super fun. So that's going to wrap up today's episode 356 with David Roche. We're moving right into the after show. Join us over there if you're a crew member. Thank you so much, everybody. We hope you have a fantastic week. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. See you guys next week.
Thanks, all.
Bye.
Bye.
Ginger Runner.